Hola y bienvenidos. Hello and welcome to Una Palabra Sola, where we get to learn Spanish one word at a time. I'm your host, Megan Miller, founder and teacher at Aprovechar Language Solutions. Empezamos and let's dive in. Hola, hola, otra vez. Bienvenidos. Welcome back to Una Palabra Sola, a podcast where we get to learn Spanish una palabra or one word at a time. And if you are tuning in to when this episode actually drops live, it's Mayo. It is May. Mayo, spelled just like the white sauce or the county. And it's not Mayo, it is Mayo. So with Mayo, what ¿Qué es el dicho? What is that phrase? April showers bring May flowers. So I thought that it was prudent to have a word that celebrates Mayo. And that word is florecer. Florecer. You might think of flor when it comes to florecer, and that is correct because this is un verbo. It is a verb that means to flower, to bloom, to flourish, to prosper. And this is really from the Latin floredo or florido, maybe to bloom, or floresco, flower, or begin to prosper or flourish. And as I've already alluded to, la flor is a flower, and that is a related noun to florecer. So florecer is the action, but la flor, or the flower, is actually the thing. If we're talking about blooming things. Also, an adjective, and this is very fun to say, floreciente. Floreciente is like blooming. So you can have unas flores florecientes, and those are blooming flowers, which is a little redundant, but for the purpose of today's lesson, go for it. Just go all in. This also might make you think of Florido or Florida, which Florida, for those that don't know. And that is basically bloomed. So you can also have florecido or florecida, and that is the past participle of bloomed. So bloomed in the past. So florido, florida is otro adjetivo. If you don't want to say floreciente, unas flores florecientes, blooming flowers, you can also say un estado florido, or a flourishing or a with bloom kind of state. So shout out to Florida, I guess. So that is all, those are all the related words of florecer, but really what it means is talking about something actually blooming, something actually flowering, something actually flourishing or prospering. And this really made me think of life, life in general, because there is that distinction between dar flor and florecer. So dar flor is exactly what it is. Uh, it just that's an obtuse meaning. But dar to give, flor flower, to give a flower. So basically, dar flor is to flower, and florecer is to flower. Those might be synonymous to you, and you might be like, Megan, why are there multiple words just to say one thing? Like, let's just talk about fucking flowers. But the thing with florecer is that it is la planta completa, or the entire plant, the entire picture, the whole picture. So is the thing thriving? Is it blooming? Dar flor just means to flower. Like plants can flower, but still not really thrive. You can look at my windowsill if you want to see more. Shout out to Waffle, the plant behind me in the back. Waffle, my new office plant, is a purple waffle, and that's where I got its name. So hopefully it's still alive. But as we talk about things that are living and showing signs of those life, showing signs of that life. This is very similar to like social media and just a very, very simple kind of in your face analogy, right? So our outside facing personas, they might have flores. You might dar flores on your social media, but how are you doing inwardly, right? Are you actually thriving internally? Are you floreciendo? Um, are you flourishing? Or are you just kind of showing flowers just to kind of show flowers because that's what is expected? Cue Miley Cyrus flowers here. So where are you kind of giving your flowers? Where are you showing those flowers? And where are you actually truly thriving? It's a good distinction to know. It's a very good distinction to know just in your everyday life. Where are you kind of showing up? And are you showing up with that full bouquet of flowers? Or are you showing up with a couple thorns? Are you resenting something? So if you show up with thorns, that might be more of showing resentment to something versus showing up with flowers. Might be like, oh, well, I'm expected to show up here with flowers, like meeting, I don't know, your partner's parents for the first time, or, going to a funeral or celebrating a holiday. It's always good to bring flowers. Are you actually just giving those flowers just to give them? Or how are you doing inside? Because I think as a society, we just put so much pressure on the outside to look a certain way, to appear a certain way, to say certain things. Versus internally, we might be just like screaming into an ether that doesn't really get a lot of time or space or focus or attention. And it can be very easy to go through life similar to a plant that you don't really feel any attachment to, or you don't really care for or care about, right? You can do that with your life. Nobody is here to say otherwise. Um, but what are you missing by doing that versus being completely into the full picture? So some synonyms, dar flor is really with plantas only. I know getting into a plant mom moment here. Also, you can superarse, transformarse, realizarse. All of these synonyms are really to make something more. So superarse, for example, is like to overcome something. Transformarse, it ends with se, right? That is a reflexive verb at the end. So me transformo, I'm transforming myself, which, better or worse, it's making me different in some way. And the realizarse. So this is a fun little linguistic tidbit between Spanish and English. When we say to flourish or to flower or to bloom or to prosper, a lot of times we will actually use like flowering as a verb in relation to somebody. Oh, she's really flowered, meaning like, oh, she was ugly before and now she's better, right? It's the same kind of outward focus. Or, oh, he's really flourished and he's bloomed into, a big strong man, whatever. Right? So a lot of times we'll use these kind of flowery verbs in relation to a person, but in Spanish, no hay computación. There's just no, it does not compute. Flowers are with plants only. So if you do want to say something about how someone is, transformed or grown or, come into their own a little bit, because I think that we all like have those moments where we grow up and we have a lot of external, I don't know, external influence on how we look or how we dress or what we say, or how we think. And then as we grow up and we become a little bit more independent and we develop that independent thought, that is really when the transformation happens, right? So if you want to talk about flowering in terms of a person, in Spanish, use realizarse. So realizar does not mean to realize. It is spelled very, very similarly, and be sure to check out the show notes for the link that gives you the whole kit and caboodle, which is a weird English saying anyways. So the whole damn thing. Be sure to check out those show notes. But realizarse is really, it's not necessarily to realize like, oh, I just realized, I have an appointment and I'm late. Um, of course, now I'm thinking, do I have an appointment and am I late? But it's not to realize in that perspective. It's really to realize like, I have this dream and I'm making it happen. That is really the realizarse. And once again, that is a reflexive verb, right? All of these verbs end with se. So you always will put, anytime that a verb ends with se, it means that it's reflexive. You're doing it to yourself. So superarse, that is that verb superar. But then you put your pronoun at the beginning. So me supero. Or transformarse. Okay, well, I'm transforming, so me transformo. Realizarse. Well, I could say like, oh, realizo, I don't know, estas metas, these big hairy goals. Or I could say me realizo, and that is something that I'm basically making inside myself. So that is the beauty of reflexive verbs, because they really are things that you do to yourself, a lot of times for yourself. You'll have that reflexive, and it shows that relationship. Like, are you doing it? And are you doing it because you want to do it? Is it internal work or is it external work? Right. And this verb, florecer, it really has that internal versus external, I don't want to say batalla, like a battle, but it's more like a pelea. It's more like a little fight, like maybe a little cat fight where you just kind of slap each other, because that fight is really between your internal and your external. So internally, are you floreciendo? Are you flourishing internally versus are you just appearing like you are? And if you're just appearing like you are, okay, that's cool. Are you okay with that? Do you want that? Or if you don't want that, if that doesn't feel comfortable, if it doesn't feel safe or secure or like contentment or joy, what little things or shifts can you do to change that? So the other thing that I love about this verb, and I don't know if it's weird to love a verb, but I do, is that when this verb florecer becomes reflexive, florecerse, it means to get moldy. So this is very much too much of a good thing. So I don't know if you've ever gotten flowers and you were just overwhelmed at how many fucking flowers you have just gotten and like what you're going to do with them or what one can do with them and like just the excess of it all. I don't know if you've ever had that moment, but that is really like too much of a good thing. Because yes, we want to be flourishing and blooming and prospering. But I think this is just the normal kind of checks and balance that life gives us. You can't bloom in all areas of your life. Like you can't prosper in all areas of your life at the same time. There's always something, right? There's always something that could be a little bit better. There's always something that could be a little tweaked. There's always something that could be massaged or, you know, there's always something. And that's, I think, part of the beauty of living is you can say, okay, like I'm good over here, but I really want over here, I want, more community. I want a stronger sense of self. Maybe I want to do something with my hands. Maybe I want to read about Buddhism. Like, whatever that is, like, there's always got to be something to kind of continue to pull you forward. It can't be like, okay, well, me realizo. Okay, so, I've done all the inner work and I have no more demons and I've released all the shit that has been weighing me down and all my relationships with my parents and family and friends, and partner, all of that's good. So, I'm good. I'm set. If you are that way, I would love to speak with you because I am truly of the belief that in life, There's always something that pushes you forward and away. It's like, oh, okay, so I've mastered this. Where else can I use this beginner mindset? Oh, so you habla español más o menos bien. Like, I'm good. I'm good with my Spanish right now. What else can I learn? What can I do? How can I grow? How could I, help in some way, shape, or form? Humans, as weird and fallible and malleable as we are, there's always something. We always need help in some way, shape, or form. And we all need help in different ways. And this is where you can look at la planta completa. You can look at the full plant as yourself and say, okay, am I thriving? Cool. And then you can look at la planta completa with, for example, family. How can I help? How can I help, my aunt start a business? Or how can I help, whatever. And you can look at la planta completa in your community, in your city, in your town, in your suburb, wherever. You can look at la planta completa with in regards to, something that you care about, some sort of value or mission, something that continues to drive you forward. Um, like, for example, I love animals. If I could be surrounded by puppies right now, I absolutely would be. So it's like, okay, I know that I probably cannot afford to adopt 55 dogs at this point. So can I go work at a shelter? Can I go volunteer for an hour a week? Like how could I help? So this is very much of florecer in la vida real, right? This is very much like, okay, how can I flourish or bloom or prosper in in real life? Because everything that I do has that reality bend to it. Like we all can't be like LeBron James or whomever that we look up to going, they're doing 55 things and they're doing all of them really well, but are they doing them or is their team doing them? So that's that's one way to look at it. But then the other way, the antonym is to get moldy, to do too much. Like, and this is very much of, burnout. If you are not taking care of your internal life and making sure that you're flowering or blooming or flourishing in some way, shape, or form internally, and if you focus completely externally, you're going to get moldy. You're going to get too much of a good thing. Life is going to be like, no, look at your life, look at your choices. What about you? And on the flip side, if you do all this internal work and you're like, okay, like I'm ready, I'm a good member of society, life is going to be like, no, you are so self-centered. You are so self-focused. Like, it's great that you've done this work, but how can you help others around you, right? So no matter what it is, if it's internal facing or external facing, or wherever your current just kind of objetivos, your current goals are, there's always something to, water. If we're gonna go on the plant analogy, water at a reasonable pace, don't overwater. I'm finding out that that is a thing, and it's a thing that I do. So don't overwater because you're gonna get fucking mold. Nobody wants mold. So it's really about finding un ritmo natural, a natural rhythm for you, as you are going about your flowering journey. I mean, another very just kind of in your face antonym is morir, to die, which if we're talking about plants, totally acceptable. If we're talking about people, please talk to a therapist first because that's a big jump between morir and florecer. Like there's a lot of complacency in the middle there, and really a better adjective or antonym that would serve you a little bit more. Also, two verbs are fallar or fracasar. So these are two antonyms, and they both mean to fail. So you can have a fallo, a failure, or you can have una fracasa. You can have a failure and in that way. And that's going to be the opposite of flowering, blooming, prospering, flourishing, right? So a lot of times as we just kind of go through this jungla, this jungle of life, and we don't really know what's under all the leaves that we're overturning, um, there are opportunities to flourish and there are opportunities to fail. And both are good. We need both, right? You need los dos lados. You need the two sides because otherwise it's going to get boring to prosper all the time. Like even Aladdin had a huge amount of failure in it as a movie and as a human and morally. Like there was a lot that he had to fail at in order to learn. It's top of mind because that's how I spent my last Saturday. And then you have, too much failure. Well, there are Wikipedia pages for that, but too much failure, and then it becomes deprimido and it becomes depressing, and nobody wants to learn about that, right? So as with everything, there's this natural balance, this natural rhythm, and really the objective of florecer is to be able to pinpoint when things are going well. And then if that verb ever becomes reflexive with florecerse, it's okay. It's a little too moldy. It's a little bit too much of a good thing. Where can I pull back from that? So the weird thing with florecer, and it's not really weird, let's face it, because it is a verb that ends in CER, but it does have that irregular yo. So in order to conjugate it, florecer, florezco, floreces, florece, florecemos, florecen, florecéis if you're in Spain there. So it does have that irregular yo conjugation, florezco. So when I ask, like, okay, where are you giving your flowers? Where are you truly thriving? Like, it's all about where we put that energy and really where we put that nourishment, that nurturing, right? So, what have you done for yourself and what have you done for other people today? And is that a balance? Is that a 50-50 balance or is that more of an equilibrium balance? Like it all adds up to 100%, whereas it's not necessarily equal. So as I said earlier, like in English, we tend to say things like he's blossoming, like he's thriving, he's coming out of his shell. Spanish metaphor does not carry as well. So it's so weird though to me because Spanish is such a much more flowery language. Like there's a lot of flourish and embellishments. And English is very much, like TBD, AOP, like whatever we can put in an acronym to be more efficient, we're like obsessed with that, right? EOD, like things like that. Whereas Spanish is much more like, por el final de día, or whenever. Like it's a little bit more of a flowery language. However, this is just it's another example of these are two distinct languages, right? So Spanish with the adjectives and the sentence structure, yeah, it's flowery as fuck and I love it. With the verbs, it's actually much more efficient than English. Like think about it, in los verbos, as long as you know the subject, I can say something like, oh, I don't know, Raúl se dejó el trabajo y ahora va a ir al supermercado para ir de compras y tiene novia y su nombre es Ana, and okay, I was talking about Raúl, now I'm talking about Ana, and then I could say something like, oh, sí, fueron a España la semana pasada, and like, I'm talking now about the two of them. Whereas in English, it's like, okay, well, he's here, and then she's there, and then now they who went to Spain last week? Like, so with verbs, Spanish is actually much more efficient. And it's that conjugation, right? You have to first know your pronombres, you have to know your pronouns, yo, tú, él, ellos, usted, nosotros, vosotros, if you're in Spain, and ustedes, or ellos, or ellas. Like, you have to know your conjugations. And once again, shout out to the show notes. So I will link the actual T-chart for this verb, florecer. I will link this conjugation in there. So you do have to know your pronouns, but once you do, like, it becomes a lot easier to translate sentences. Like, oh, tú vas a hacer algo. I know, for example, that A, I'm talking to you, and two, B, I know that I'm talking to you and we have a good relationship. Maybe you're younger than me, or we are in a very casual relationship because I'm using tú versus usted. Like, usted va a hacer algo. That is something, it might be a little bit more formal relationship. There might be more distance between it. Maybe we just started working together and I want to show you that respect by using usted, but it's still going to be you. Like, I'm still talking to you. And there are these little matices, these little nuances, especially in verbs, in verb conjugations, um, that are just really, really useful, especially as you start to kind of walk through the language and, pick up flowers as you want and point out little things as you want. So it's really good for, dando un paseo or just taking a stroll through the language. So with those verbs and those little matices or those nuances between English and Spanish, definitely want to make sure to keep the verb clear, right? So you want to conjugate that verb and focus on the verb first, and then you can embellish with things, vocabulary, if you'd like, right? So basically keep the base clear and then pile your embellishments on top. And of course, metaphors still exist. Like the biggest in your face one is Como la Flor by Selena Quintanilla. And this song is all about like a flower, right? It's the first song that came to mind with florecer when I first was like, oh, I want to have a verb that really encapsulates the spirit of May and how we all need to blossom and bloom at least once a year. Right? If you're an annual or perennial, it doesn't matter. Um, but we all need to kind of show off at least once a year and say, yeah, I'm doing good here. I'm flourishing. I am nurturing. I'm nurturing myself. I'm nurturing others. Um, I'm I don't know, confident and just content. Estoy contenta with all of these. So if you are looking for those sentimientos de contenta, you're looking for those feelings of contentment, de alegría, de paz, be sure to check out Deseo. So Deseo is my monthly Spanish program. You can find more details at deseospanishprogram.info. And really, Deseo, it has two prerequisites. One, it does cost money. It's not that much money. It is a monthly membership that goes from $27 to $89. But it does cost money, just putting that out there. And two, you have to come with that wish. It's a deseo. So when we talk about un deseo, it's a wish, it's a desire. It's something that I cannot teach. It doesn't matter how red in the face I get. It doesn't matter what visuals I use. I can't teach a want. You have to come with that want. But once you do, oh boy, we get into habits, we get into neuroscience, we get into daily Spanish practice, y por supuesto, of course, we also get into real life Spanish because that real life Spanish, that is what actually means something. It's what's needed in the world is to have a language that you can actually utilize wherever you are in ese pinche mundo. So be sure to check out the show notes, transcript, request a word, or be on the show. And that lovely florecer teacher art conjugation, check out aprovechar.me. Hasta la próxima vez. Until next time, un abrazo fuerte.